because George, you're holding back here, okay, but I know everything. You helped get me on XM and Sirius.
Well, your ability got you on.
No, I know, but you met with the presidents and the people and jumped through the hoops. Even though the Color Channel never put other people's shows on, they did that because there were some patriots there. So I just want to commend you, man. Look, George, I know everything you did, and I appreciate you.
That's okay, my friend. Now, how many hours are you into this operation here?
Well, I mean, we're doing 28, but I've only done 4 so far, and I'm back for a few hours, and I'm back in the morning and back in the afternoon. We're trying to fundraise, in this crazy economy, trying to build and fight, where we've got 40% specials on Brain Force and a lot of other specials, 40% off on storable foods and 20% off on water filters and stuff like that. But tell me about your view of Donald Trump, the world events, the crossroads, the Democratic Party, the emails. I mean, what's front and center? What's coming up on Coast to Coast AM tonight at midnight Central? It's 10 p.m. Pacific.
We've got lots going on coast to coast tonight, but we start with our round robin of the world events, Alex. I've got a correspondent at the at the Democratic National Convention in Philadelphia. We've got people all over the place commenting. Dr. John Curtis, Howard Bloom, our experts on the primaries are going to be talking and giving reaction, as they have during the Republican convention last week. And then we'll go into our typical coast-to-coast shows. We'll have some fun. We're going to talk about metaphysical things. But I got to tell you, this is the strangest election year for the presidency I have ever seen, ever witnessed in my life. And we don't endorse on Coast to Coast. I try not to do that. I want to bring out all the views, let people make up their own minds who they want. I'll bring out people who are for Trump and against Trump. I'll bring out people who are for Hillary and against Hillary.
Sure, but I can tell overall you're a libertarian. You're for Trump.
I'm a libertarian generally. I go right down the middle of the road, and I call it the way I see it. I mean, people were talking about me running for the presidency. I would have offered the VP slot to Condoleezza Rice, and the cabinet would have been made up of libertarians, Democrats, and Republicans.
Sure, big
the best people. I want the best people.
But the party bosses don't want unification. In your gut, George Norrie, coasttocoastam.com, who's going to win this election? I think it's Trump.
Well, you're asking me that today, so I will tell you my feelings based on today. I will preface it by saying that events can change at any moment, Alex,
like the wind,
as we lead up to November 8th. But if people went into the voting booth today, I think that Donald Trump would be our next president.
I do too. I'm not going to get into it.
People want change. They want change. They're tired of the status quo. Hillary's part of the status quo. Donald Trump is not. Like him or not, for his abilities, what he's done, people just want to change. And they're prepared to give this to a guy who's a non-politician. So, again, if the election were held today, I think Donald would win. He would probably win by 5 points, which is pretty good.
I agree with you, and I think it's a lot higher than that. There's a lot of closeted folks that are scared to say they're for Trump.
Once they're in a booth, an election booth, without any eyes or ears looking at them, we'll see what happens. However, don't forget black box voting. These electronic voting machines, we got to get Bev Harris back on our shows.
I agree.
To talk about the possibility of these elections.
Well, let me give you the big scoop, because I'd literally dropped my phone in the sink when you were trying to get me on. Was it the RNC last week? I'd love to come on any time. Roger Stone's been on, but
on me.
It's good how I didn't. You guys broken for a day and a half. But seriously, I never miss your show. Gosh, that's 60 million listeners. George, looking at this, I've talked to Trump people, talked to Roger Stone, and I know you've had on. Trump thinks they're going to try to steal it, and he's making preparations. He's going to fight it. What happens if they try to steal it? Like in California, where Hillary people met with AP and the superdelegates and decided who would win the day before and just ignored the votes. I mean, that's even in the news. This is very, very brazen of them. What do you think is happening?
If they try to steal it, it will be a disaster of biblical proportions, because Donald Trump is not the kind of guy to sit back and get beaten and get slapped around. And there is incredible suspicions about these voting machines and how they're done. And we're going to monitor that. We're going to have Bev Harris on way before November 8th. We're going to talk about what she thinks is being done, how it can be stopped, how we can prevent anybody from tampering and tinkering around with our results.
And the reason I like her is she's a hardcore liberal and Democrat, but when Democrats steal, she says it. When Republicans steal, she says it.
Exactly. She's very fair at what she does.
Now, let's expand on that, George, because a lot of people won't stick their necks out. That's why I went back to the fact that, you put me on the air and the rest of it. And I was later told by executives, everybody knew your show would have a lot of ratings. We were scared to put it on XM, but George Norrie said you ought to do it. He's a good guy. Why don't more people, I guess it's happening now, but why don't people stick their necks out? Don't they get that's what life's all about, not being a coward?
Well, a lot of people like to putt to the green, right? Or as they say in golf, they take the easy approach. I'm the kind of guy, you're the kind of guy that want to smack that ball over a lake to see if we can get on the green in 2. And sometimes we end up hitting it in the water. But you know what? We're going to get it up there eventually. And that's what's going on right now. We don't take the safe approach. We take the approach that we know will work and will help the people in this country. And that's the way we've done it all our lives since we were little kids. We always experimented. We always took the most difficult way. And you know what? As Robert Frost wrote in his poem, A Road Not Taken, 2 roads diverged in a yellow wood. Alex, you and I have gone down that other road that a lot of people don't go down, and I'm glad we did.
God almighty. I find all the coolest people on that road, George.
I have been totally blessed to get to meet one of my idols, somebody who totally touched my soul as a young person growing up.
Me too.
It makes me cry. I went to see his 90s. Concert and I just was sobbing, and I was like, oh my God, teenage me is dying right now.
Right.
But he is very spiritually awake, and so I can kind of text him here and then. We've been able to sort of develop a friendship.
Oh, that's great.
And so after the world is literally on fire, and so I can call him up or text him and say, how do I stay in this God space? And he can offer totally spiritual insight that's quite refreshing. And we've actually got him on the phone now.
Cool.
Mr. Corgan, are you there?
I am here.
Awesome. So I know you were driving. Are you on the road still? How are you doing?
I'm on the byways of America. I'm fine. Thank you for asking.
So, okay, it sounds like we've got a really good connection. I don't know if you've been able to tune into any of the show, but we've definitely been kind of going there, talking about Atlantis and some different prophecies, things that have been going on in the world, kind of leading in with you. Just how do we hear, as we're fighting this info war, and we're looking at these stories every day, and we're talking about the prophecies and how we're just sort of seeing these things manifest, and we're seeing the establishment try to gaslight humanity and tell them that they're not, all the craziness and mayhem that you're seeing out there, it's not real. It's almost kind of trying to keep us asleep until they're able to strike. But how do we look at what's going on in the world and maintain kind of a God consciousness and remember who we truly are in the face of all this fear?
That's a good question.
Well, that's a pretty deep question there.
That's why I lead off with it.
Well, I think you start from the perspective of you have to be able to understand what you're looking at. And I think, as we talked about the last time I was on, and I got in a bunch of trouble, there's so much going on right now that we're being told not to see what we see. Our natural instinctual systems will tell us this is dangerous, this is uncomfortable. I should have a greater emotional reaction to reading about some terrible thing that happened, and I'm not. Why am I not? So I think we have to each kind of check our own self against what we're seeing and experiencing and note where we're not having an appropriate response. Like you and I were talking earlier today a little bit in preparation for the interview, how ultra-violence is being normalized in our culture. So literally by the end of the day, we're not even focused anymore on the horrible terrorism thing that happened. And I heard a statistic today that literally there's a terrorism attack going on every 84 hours now.
Wow.
Right, and you're right. It's getting normalized. Like there was 4 or 5 attacks in Germany. Someone's getting hatcheted up with an axe, and then you have the
France and
I don't know. I can't think of the official title now, but basically admonishing the police officers for how dare you shoot that man that was trying to kill you with an axe and just got done. And then it's like you move on to the next story, the next terrible thing that happens, and the government is telling you, this is the new normal. You need to get used to this. And oh, by the way, we're going to continue opening up the borders, right. And we know that there's no way to vet this. And what do you think is behind this?
Well, I think I like to keep it kind of in the spiritual side of the conversation because I think that's sort of more interesting in the moment. So I want to go back a little bit to what I was saying. You must be able to see clearly what you're looking at, and if you're hypnotized or propagandized, you are almost incapable of having a correct human or humanistic read to what happens. Which is why you see a greater outpouring oftentimes in American culture for things that are terrible. I think back to the time the boy fell in the hole or something, and they had around the clock coverage. I think even the great director Billy Wilder made a movie with Kirk Douglas in the 50s, similar storyline where a boy falls in a hole and everyone goes crazy trying to save the boy. We have an easier time bridging the emotional gap for something like that, something we can relate to. Oh my God, the boy fell in the hole. We want to get the boy out of the hole. Then we can. A drone strike kills 27 people somewhere where we couldn't even point it out on the map.
Mm-hmm.
So we get into like a disproportionate humanistic response to terrible things, where our senses are inverted. So when you ask how do you approach these problems, or how do you stay positive, if you actually can't identify what you're looking at with clarity, then you actually cannot have an appropriate response or an appropriate solution because you haven't identified what the problem actually is.
Mm. Yeah, and it seems like there is sort of a concerted effort to kind of confuse people so they can't have the appropriate human response to what's going on around the world. So we were talking a little bit earlier with Stan Deo, just sort of about some prophecies. Talk to me a little bit about what you know about maybe this shift in human understanding. And while some people might not really care about those sort of things, the rulers of this world are quite aware of the more esoteric things going on the planet, in the universe. They are quite aware of this shift in human understanding and are possibly trying to confuse humanity so that we don't have our natural human responses to things. So talk to me a little bit about that, and how do we sort of prepare for this?
Well, if anyone ever read the very interesting book about the Doors, Jim Morrison, I think it was called No One Here Gets Out Alive. It came out in the early 80s, and it was written by their former manager. He talked about many things that Jim Morrison was into, but one thing that really stuck out to me as a young person, and I've often thought in terms of playing concerts and being in the audience, is Jim Morrison believed that you could tip a crowd with only about 4 people in the audience. But basically 4 people planted the audience yelling inappropriate things to get the audience to turn against the band. Mm. So the reason I point this out is what you're seeing in and obviously INFOWARS is very connected to this concept. What you're seeing is we're reaching a sort of critical mass / tipping point where you don't have to be aware of everything that's going on. You only have to be aware that what you've been sold your entire life, literally, is not true. And as the human system in response starts to kick in and say, wait a second, I've been deluded, or this doesn't feel right, and you start actually opening your eyes, for lack of a better symbol, and recognizing that what you're looking at isn't real, then you start having you start almost going into a fight or flight response, because that is the natural response. Oh my God, what I'm looking at is actually not real. And as you open yourself awareness-wise, however you want to go at it, you begin to go into kind of a response that is in your system. It's designed to fight or flight. And Alex oftentimes takes a lot of crap for, kind of losing his mind in the air, going ballistic or whatever. But he is having an appropriate response to what he's seeing, which is he's overwhelmed by the flight or fight response of what I'm looking at is actually terrifying.
Right. And I know that he's had a really awesome rant about that. He's like, you should be afraid. You should be angry. This is crazy. I mean, this is what I'm looking at the DNC and watching it and just